Today is the day that the church universal, like all around the world, celebrates the beginning of what's called Holy Week. And Holy Week is the beginning of the journey of Jesus to the cross, 1 week away from the events of Good Friday, the crucifixion, and Easter Sunday, the resurrection. And so today is called Palm Sunday, and we begin that road to the cross today. And so I want us to really settle into what Palm Sunday is so that we can begin to experience the invitation that Jesus has for us. So I don't want to go really quickly past it. So will you go with me there in our imaginations and our minds? I'm going to try to paint the picture. So maybe take a deep breath and kind of clear your mind for a minute. And I want you to try to go there with me. So picture first century Jerusalem. Okay, the best you can, just try to picture what it was like. It's this ancient city, but it's a special week. It's Passover week in first century Jerusalem. And because of that, things are bursting at the seams. It's super crazy. It's super intense. People have come from all over to celebrate the Passover festival. And so not just thousands of extra people in the city, not just tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of extra people have gathered into the city for this special event, Passover. And so you can imagine pilgrims have come from other places, journeying, some of them, for weeks, sleeping in fields, all to get there to Jerusalem. So picture the streets are filled with pilgrims. It's filled with families who are carrying lots of supplies for the events. Over 1 million animals were coming in to be slaughtered, to be sacrificed. And so there's lots of livestock everywhere. Merchants are setting up on street corners. So every single piece of land is full. And every single road is just packed with people. I mean, it would be 10 times when the Olympics come to LA. This is 4:05 Friday at 5 o'clock, but more intense. So every single thing visually is overwhelmed, but then also the smells are overwhelming because you have all that livestock and you have all that food and you have all that sweat and you have all the dust. And it's all of that becomes overwhelming. And then it's the sounds. You have the sounds of families talking. You have the sounds of singing happening because it's Passover. You have arguments going on. You have conversations. You have laughter. And so all these different senses, your eyes and your ears and your sense of smell, it's all affected because this city is maxed completely out. It's bursting at the seams. But it's not just on that level that things are really tense and intense. It's also beneath the surface, emotionally and spiritually and mentally, something's going on because Passover is a time where the Jewish people were remembering something really, really significant. They're remembering that God had set them free from captivity, that God had liberated them from slavery, that they had been delivered from oppression and slavery in Egypt. And so thousands of years before, there was this wonderful, miraculous, provisional story of God breaking through and giving them triumph and freedom. And this is a celebration of that moment. And all the people are remembering how God is their liberator. They're singing songs about it. They're eating food about it. And their entire joyous celebration is all about that, except for one big, huge thing that's going on. They're once again under captivity. Now the Jerusalem is oppressed by and ruled by Rome. This time, not Egypt, but Rome. And so Roman soldiers occupy their land. And so even though they're out having Passover meal and celebrating their liberation, there might be Roman soldiers out in the front of the living space patrolling. Roman soldiers patrolling the streets. Roman taxes draining their pocketbooks. Roman weightiness and oppression just felt by every single person there. Can you imagine that? It's we're celebrating that we've been made free, but we're not free. It's like having the 4th of July when there are enemy tanks all around us, if you're patriotic. It's this is a place where there was lots of volatility under the surface. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot going on with these people. And here's the deal. Rome, the occupying land, they know it. They're not stupid. They know that the Jewish people are celebrating freedom, that it's like an Independence Day for them, and yet they're the oppressor. They're occupying the land. And so Rome does what Rome often would do. They make a scene. So if I'm Jerusalem, I'm like the center of the city, then picture this, like over here to the west of the city, historians would tell us that a parade began to enter the town. And the parade was led by Pontius Pilate, the emperor, the governor of Rome. And he came from like his beach villa, like off on the side with this beautiful place, this palace. He came into Jerusalem during this festival on a giant, muscular, beautiful, just vicious-looking beast, this war horse, this white horse. And he's sitting on it, and following him is like a huge legion of Roman troops. And so you can hear like the boots on the ground. You can hear like the hooves hitting the ground from all the horses. And even without like looking, you can hear them coming because it's the rumble of this huge army. But you can also look and see the glistening of like all this armor, the shields, the swords, the spears, like glistening in the sun. And it's all meant to intimidate, to say, hey, Jewish people, don't forget that that you are under our control. You're under our dominion. Don't get any wise ideas. This is a parade of power. It's a parade of dominion. It's a parade of force. Does that make sense? But then over here on this side of the city, at exactly the same time, we believe, there's another parade coming into town. And this parade is very different because coming down from the Mount of Olives and going up into Jerusalem, there's this big procession with hundreds of people. But this parade is led by Jesus. And he's not on a war horse that's white, covered with armor. He's actually sitting on a young donkey. And behind him aren't warriors with like spears and swords and shields. Behind him are ordinary people, women and children and tax collectors and families and prostitutes and sinners and just all people from society, from the margins, the outcasts, the everyday, the ordinary people. And they're not like waving Roman flags. They're shouting something. They're shouting something. They're saying, Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And that's a huge contrast between what we saw happening over here. And this is the setup for Palm Sunday. You have Jerusalem bursting at the seams. You have a parade of power coming. And you have a parade of humility and of peace. And so the question that Palm Sunday brings to each one of you today and to me is, which parade are you in? Which parade are you being a part of right now? That's what we're going to explore in the next few minutes. And so if you have your Bible, go ahead and open it up to John chapter 12. We're going to look at what the text says. And we're also going to have the words up on the screen, so feel free to follow along up there or in the Bible in the seat back in front of you. It's John chapter 12, verse 12. And this is what we read. Read this. The next day, so I'll just stop there real quickly. Jesus had been going around for 3 years now, proclaiming and demonstrating that the kingdom of God had come into earth, that heaven was breaking in, that through Jesus, the reign of the Father was coming and making wrong things right. And he was proclaiming liberty to the captives. He was setting people free. He's healing diseases. He's proclaiming that the presence and the reality of God is there and coming among them in tangible, beautiful, mysterious, but wonderful ways that we can only long for and anticipate. And so people were slowly starting to follow after this controversial this figure who's proclaiming wonderful but yet crazy things really about himself and about this earth. And so many people were captivated that now they're beginning to follow him. And so we read that the next day, this is like right after Jesus actually raised someone from the dead, his friend Lazarus, in a tomb, called him into life. And so the word is out. Jesus has developed quite a reputation. So there's a great crowd that had come for the festival, and they heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. So they're saying, wait, this figure, this person who is doing these things is actually going to be here at the festival? So they make their way, and they're the ones who take initiative. It says they went out to meet him. So they're expectant, they're urgent, they're hopeful. And it says that they took palm branches when they went out to meet him. Now, when I think of a palm branch, just basically I think of like LA palm trees. I have one by my house. The branches fall and they're ugly. Or you can think of like some little decoration of some kind. But palm branches in ancient Israel were like a flag of freedom. It was a nationalistic symbol. Anytime Israel would find freedom from the oppressor, they would have a palm branch. Anytime they experienced deliverance from captivity, a palm branch would be used. So this is a very significant statement. It's a nationalistic, if you will, statement being made when they pull out palm branches. They're basically saying, this is our time. This is important. This might be the day. And then they start shouting, Hosanna. And as Jacob said earlier today, Hosanna means save us now. So when they start crying that out to Jesus, they're saying, save us, Jesus, and save us now, not tomorrow, not someday, not like in the future reign and time, but save us right now. And it's fascinating what they're saying, because then they go on to say, blessed is the King of Israel. They're saying, save us, King of Israel. And what they mean is, save us by overthrowing Rome. Save us by fixing our situation, by making Israel great again. Fix us by restoring our nation. And they're saying the right words, but they have the wrong expectations. They're telling Jesus, you're our king, but they're placing all these expectations and assumptions on what kind of a king he is. So what does Jesus do? This is the king who comes in peace. Well, Jesus doesn't give a lecture. He doesn't rebuke them. He doesn't correct them with words. Instead, he finds an object. It says that he goes on in verse 14. It says, Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it. He found the most unmilitaristic, most unintimidating animal, besides like a poodle of some kind probably, like a donkey, and he sat on it. And this is how a king comes. And in doing so, he's fulfilling an ancient prophecy. We continue in verse 15. It was written before, do not be afraid, daughter Zion, God says. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. See, the people are saying, Jesus, save us, be our conquering king. And Jesus is saying, I've come to save. I've come to set you free, but I'm your peaceful king. I've come to set you free and save you, but not in the way that you've anticipated. I'm the king that you need, but I'm not the king that you're wanting right now. I'm your peaceful king. I'm here to save, but not as you think. And so there's an incredible tension that's starting to happen. Can you see that? It's like the crowd is crying out, Jesus, overthrow Rome, set us free, make us free again. And Jesus is saying, no, I'm not that kind of king. And so Jesus is revealing a different type of kingdom. And that gap that's in the middle of Jesus being the king of peace and Pontius Pilate in Rome being this powerful kingdom in dominance and rule and oppression, that is what begins to break everything over Holy Week. And so this Holy Week that we're in now, over the next 4 or 5 or 6 days, the story begins to unfold in such a phenomenal way as the people watch that Jesus isn't the king that they wanted, but he's absolutely the king that they needed. And what begins to happen is those same crowds that went from cheering Jesus, saying, crown him, by the end of the week, by Good Friday, they're shouting, crucify him, because they've been so disappointed. They completely turn on him. Now, here's the thing. This is the absolute tragedy to it all. They weren't wrong in wanting to be saved, were they? No. They were not wrong. They were just wrong about what they needed saving from. They thought they needed to be saved from Rome. They thought their problem was Rome. Jesus is saying, no, your problem is sin. Your problem is your rebellion. It's the corruption in your heart. The Jewish people thought if our circumstances could just change, then we could be free. And Jesus is saying, you're never going to be free unless your heart is set free. They wanted external transformation all around them. They wanted to see their nation made great. And Jesus is saying, no, it's an internal transformation that I'm bringing. Jesus is bringing a revolution within them, and they're only looking at what's around them. Now, if we're honest, this is our story too. This is exactly what we start to do in our own lives with Jesus, our King. We begin to realize that we do want and we need a king to lead us. I think we all cry out for that in one way or another, but we want a very specific type of king in our lives. We want a king who fixes things, a king who fixes our country, who fixes our city, a king who fixes our finances, a king who opens the right doors and closes the wrong doors. We want a king who is kind of more like a life coach, like a victorious life coach that makes us great again. And we don't mind Jesus being king as long as he kind of stays inside that framework. And many of you, that's been your experience with God or with the church, is it's like, I love the idea of Jesus being peaceful and kind and gentle. And I really want the positivity he brings as like this supernatural life coach in a way. As long as he's helping me, as long as he's gently leading me, as long as he's supporting me, as long as he's agreeing with me, as long as he's staying in my little Sunday experience, as long as it's really uplifting to me, as long as he doesn't start confronting my political views or my sexual ethics or my finances or my relationships or my sense of identity or my purpose in this life, then I do want a king. But here's the tension that we see on Palm Sunday, you guys. Jesus doesn't come to support our lives. He's not here to just support us. He's here to lead our lives. He's not here to just fit into our plans. He actually came to revolutionize our plans, to change them, to bring us into abundant life, more and better life than anything we've ever known or imagined. He doesn't come to just be useful to us, like a portion of our lives, like the little spiritual aspect, the religious part of us. He actually comes to be Lord, to be actual king, leader of our lives. And that's where things start to get really uncomfortable, if we're honest, because most of us like to lead our lives ourselves. And so when Jesus starts to take leadership in ways that may be uncomfortable for us, we resist and we question and we hesitate. And that's exactly what was happening in Jerusalem. And I know what this is like, and I think if you're honest, you know what it was like as well. Like, I can think back to my life so many times where I wanted Jesus to be the one who had the great sword and just like came in and fixed the situation on my terms. Where Jesus would ride in on a white horse and just make everything great. Have you ever felt like that? Like, there are times when, even just a few weeks ago, my wife and I, there was something we really wanted, not needed, but wanted in our lives, and we felt like this kind of aligns with something that God would want. And we kind of spiritualized it into that sense. So then we prayed, and we got excited, and we got hopeful, and we got filled with anticipation, and we even got filled with expectation. And we thought, this door is going to fling wide open. This is going to be amazing. And in a few days, the door just closed. And it didn't just close, it like slammed shut. And how did I feel? I was trusting in the Lord. I'm kidding. How did I feel? I was like, God, what are you doing? God, why is this happening? God, we wanted this. We felt like this is what you were going to do. And I realized then, I got really convicted, and I thought, wow, I'm wanting Jesus to be my king on my terms. He had a different plan, a better plan, something I wouldn't have even thought of, something I wouldn't have even imagined. And I realized then that I wasn't trusting God. I was just trying to direct God. I wanted Jesus to arrive and be the one in the army on the west with the sword and the war horse, not Jesus on the donkey, who's full of love and full of his kingdom, shalom. And when he didn't do that, I felt the tension, I felt disappointment. And that's the human condition. I mean, some of you reject Jesus as king outright. You want nothing to do with Jesus. And yet you're here today, and we're really excited about that. But others of you, you don't fully reject Jesus as king. You just reduce him as king. You just want to redefine him as king. You just want to reshape him as king. Reshape him into something manageable, something that is within your expectations. But here's the thing, Jesus refuses to be that kind of king. He refuses to fit into our desires and expectations. So let me ask you, what kind of king do you really want? Do you want the kind of king who makes life easier, like your life coach? Or do you want a king who sets your heart free, who wipes away the pain of your past and restores your dignity and it gives you new life? Do you want the king who just fixes your temporary circumstances? Or do you want a king who works deeply in your heart, bringing transformation, bringing freedom to your soul? Because the crowd chose the king that they wanted, and they tragically missed the king that they actually needed. And that's where Palm Sunday begins to lead us into Holy Week. Because from these events on the Sunday before Good Friday and Easter, we start to see the people continuing to expect that Jesus is going to be the king that they want. They still want him to overthrow Rome. They still want to see their land set free. But Jesus has entirely different plans. And so as the week goes on, each day of the week begins to reveal the kind of Jesus who he really is and the kind of Jesus that we really need. And so there's so much in this week. And if you can't tell, like Josh and I, we're all really excited about this week that we're entering into as a church. And it couldn't be more phenomenal, and it couldn't be more filled with holy anticipation and expectation for us. So there are 5 different aspects of the king that we really need that are revealed to us in this week, this Holy Week that I want to talk about today. And the first is that Jesus is a humble king. He's our humble king. The king that we really need is a humble king. And we've already looked at this. This is Palm Sunday. This is what we see on this day, Palm Sunday, that he comes in, not with power, not with force, not with a huge army with armor and a war horse. He comes on a donkey, you guys. Now, what do insecure world leaders do whenever they feel threatened? They put on a parade of power. They march out like the most giant missiles and the hugest show of force they possibly can. Jesus is on a donkey, and yet he's bringing the kingdom and the rule and the reign of God to us. And that's exactly the king that we need, because he doesn't come with intimidation to us. Some of you may have this idea that when you approach God, it's like approaching like a world dictator with great arms, and Jesus is more powerful than any of the kings of this world. He's the king of all kings. And yet you can approach him just the way that you are, because Jesus is our humble king. He comes with gentleness and with humility. Kings don't do this in our world, but our King Jesus does. He's not insecure. He doesn't have to prove himself. He doesn't have to dominate or threaten to prove his authority. He knows exactly who he is, and he's not weak. It's strength under control. And so what does that mean for us? It means that we have a king who's not waiting for you to get your whole life together so that you can be strong enough to approach him. It means that we have a king who hangs out with ordinary people. Just like in the parade of humility over here, the people that were in that parade with Jesus are the sinners, the outcasts, the ordinary people, the families, the children. That we have a king who came to be Emmanuel, God, with each and every one of us. Whether you are close to his presence or not, his arms are wide open and he desires to draw you in just as you are. He's a humble king. He comes before you. And you don't have to earn your way to him. You don't have to perform to get close to him. He's already come down just to meet you just where you are. He is our humble king on Palm Sunday, and that's what we're celebrating today. Now, his closest followers were getting really agitated by Monday. And by Tuesday, you can read the gospel accounts. It's exciting. This final week of Jesus' life is incredible. By Wednesday, the tension's rising even more. But then Thursday comes. And by Thursday, I imagine that Jesus' followers are saying, we need some kind of game plan because Rome looks like they're going to overtake you, Jesus. And they're saying, at this point, we need a battle strategy, Jesus. And so Jesus says, okay, it's Thursday. I have a battle strategy. Let me show you what it is. And you guys, this is what we call now Maundy Thursday. Everyone say Maundy Thursday. It's a very strange word. Most of us probably haven't heard it before. Maundy is just a Latin term for mandate. It's because Jesus gave us a great mandate on this day. And this is the battle strategy, you guys. Are you ready for this? He gathers his followers together for the Passover meal. They recline at the table, because that's what they did then. And they celebrate this meal. They share in it together with wine and with a feast. And as they do, they're remembering how God has delivered them. And then in the midst of this time, here's the battle strategy. Jesus gets up and he walks over to a basin of water and he takes off his outer garment and he gets the basin of water and he goes up to his followers. He's the king. And he goes up to his followers and he kneels down before them. And he picks up their feet, their dirty feet from the roads of Jerusalem I was talking about, their cracked feet from not having socks and being out in the sun. And he gets the water and he lifts up their feet and he begins to wash their feet. He tenderly washes their feet. That's our servant king. That's the kind of king that we desperately need in our hearts. Isn't that incredible? That's not how kings come usually. But that's what we're celebrating even here on Thursday here at the church. You heard Kaylee give the announcement on Maundy Thursday, where Jesus told us that now not only is he showing us that kind of love, but that now that's the command we have to love one another in this way. He says, if I'm going to wash your feet, then you're to wash one another's feet. And so this coming Thursday, we're going to wash one another's feet. Raise your hand if you feel awkward about that. Okay. Isn't that awkward? But here's the beautiful, and we're going to have guidelines around it. It's not going to be creepy. Like, don't start wondering, this is Venice. I don't want some rando touching my feet. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be dignified. Like, it has meaning to it. But here's a lot of meaning. It's actually going to be a very emotional time where, as a staff, we get very emotional even thinking about what's going to take place. Most of us have never experienced a foot washing in a service like this. But what it tells us is that Jesus draws near, even in the dirtiness of our lives, even to like the cracked places in us, even the areas that make us feel so ashamed and so awkward. And we're like, Jesus, you can't come there. You're not going to go into that place in my life. But Jesus does, and he comes close to us, and he shows us his love. He draws near to us and washes us and cleanses us. That's our servant king, and that's the kind of king that we really need, and it's the kind of king that we have in Jesus. In the kingdom of God, power moves downward like that. That's radically countercultural for us, because in our culture, power moves upwards. Power, you have to be in control. Power, you have to dominate. Power, you have to rule. Power, you need the little people to wash your feet. But no, Jesus gets down with a basin, and he washes his followers' feet. That's leadership in the kingdom of God. And that's what we're called to do as well. And then we move to Good Friday. Okay, so this is like, I'm a musician. This is like, okay, we're crescendoing. We're modulating keys. Like things are getting more intense. Now the disciples, the followers' minds are blown. It's like, what are you doing, Jesus? This is our battle plan? This is our battle plan, that we're going to humble ourselves and love one another? We're going to wash one another's feet and feast together when we're about to be overtaken and demolished? Well, then Friday comes. And it's called Good Friday for a reason. And we'll talk more about that on Friday at our Good Friday service. But Good Friday comes and Jesus is betrayed. He's sold out by one of his friends. And he's delivered into the hands of the leaders of the city and of the religious leaders, and he goes and is suffered, he's beaten, he's tortured, and he's crucified ultimately on the cross. And this is our sacrificial king. This is the king that we desperately need in our lives and the king that we have. He's a king who doesn't kill his enemies. He gives his life for his enemies. And he's mocked and he's beaten and he's crucified, and he carries all of our sin and shame. He takes all the sin and he's not just a martyr. He's like a supernatural shock absorber. He takes all the sin and pain and suffering of the world into himself, and he absorbs it so that we can find freedom. He takes everything broken in your life and in my life, and he quite literally, as Josh would say, puts it on himself. And what that means for us is that we have a king who brings us liberation, who takes on our sin and brings us wholeness. We have a king who doesn't shame us for our past. He doesn't shame us for the things that are done in the secret. He doesn't minimize our brokenness, he redeems it. And he carries our burdens, he carries our shame and our suffering. And that means that there's nothing more powerful in our lives than the grace of God, than his beautiful love for us. There's no failure too deep. There's no past that's too complicated. There's no rebellion that was too intense. No wound that's beyond his reach. He took it all onto the cross. And this Friday night at 7, it's an intense service. We're going imagine the juxtaposition of going from this meal that we're going to have together on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. We're going to eat together by candlelight. And then we're going to do this scandalous, radical kind of loving thing of trying to wash one another's feet somehow. And it's going to be emotional, and it's going to be tender. But then we come together to experience our sacrificial king on Friday. And there's going to be a giant cross in the middle of the room, and it's going to be silent at times. And we're going to have the communion meal once again. But this time we're going to be reflecting and remembering the pain he suffered, the shame he bore. Though he was perfect in every way and without sin, he took on our sin so that we could become righteous in him. That's Friday night. And then we move on to the next night in Holy Week, or the next day in Holy Week. It's something that we often pass right by in the church. We don't have a service for it. It's something that we do individually in our hearts. But it's what's called Holy Saturday. Can you imagine Holy Saturday? What's just happened? This crazy parade, these 2 parades, the washing of feet, the strategy, the game plan, the cross, the crucifixion, and now Jesus has been hung and killed and is dead and is buried. And Saturday comes, and everyone's minds are just blown. They're completely confused. What happened to this Jesus that we've been following? Where is he? He's been killed. His body is in the tomb. He's silent in the grave. And so this is what we enter into on Holy Saturday together, a time of silence, a time of waiting, a time of wondering. It's a time of mystery where we're saying, what in the world just happened to my God? But here's the kind of king that we have on Holy Saturday. We have the king that's faithful. He's the silent king sometimes, but he's the king that's working even in the silence. Because even though he's seeming to be completely silent, victory is starting to unfold. That behind the scenes, victory is starting to come. Things are unraveling from the grave, and God is working together his plan for redemption. And what that tells us is that in our lives, whenever we are waiting on God, whenever we feel like he's silent, when we don't know where he is, when our hearts are breaking, do you guys ever feel that way? Like I feel that burden for some of you because you wait and you wonder, where is he? And it's at this time when we remember that we have a faithful king who's working even when we don't see it. He's moving even when we can't tell. He's always at work in different ways. And so this is what Holy Saturday brings us. But then, everyone drum roll quite seriously, we move into the next day of Holy Week, which is Easter, which is Resurrection Sunday, when we go to the the tomb in the morning, or people went to the tomb in the morning, and they saw that the stone had been rolled away, and that Jesus actually is alive, and that he's risen from the dead, and that he was victorious overall, just not in the way people thought. It wasn't by that kind of power and that kind of dominion and that kind of force and that kind of violence. It was through the loving hand of God, through being sacrificial and humble and holy and these types of things, that God began to bring new life, and he was our victorious king on that day. And so Easter Sunday here, we're going to move from the darkness of Good Friday and the silence of Holy Saturday to an incredible celebration together Sunday morning. And we're going to culminate that time even with baptisms, which tell this incredible story of death to life, of resurrection power. And it's going to be an incredible, incredible time for us. So the king who is victorious means that for every one of us, your story isn't over right now. It's not all finished. Things haven't just peaked in your life. There's more. Your failures don't get the final word. Your past doesn't define you. Because he lives, you're not stuck. There's a future. There's a plan. There's purpose beyond what anything you've ever imagined. New life is possible. That's the kind of king that we have that Holy Week demonstrates to us. He's a humble king. He's our servant king. He's our sacrificial king. He's our faithful king in the silence. And he's our strong and victorious king over death. It's an incredible, incredible thing. But here's the thing, guys. The question isn't just what kind of king is he? That's not the question. It's not what kind of king is he? The question is he your king? Is he your king? Because Palm Sunday is not just about cheering for him. What we come down to on a day like today is it's not about cheering for him, it's about choosing him. Will you choose Jesus as your king? The crowd celebrated and cheered all they could, but they didn't follow him. And within just a few days, they fell away. The question isn't, do you like Jesus? The question isn't, are you inspired by him? The question isn't, do you agree with him? The question is, are you following him? Everywhere Jesus leads, he leads somewhere. And so we see this beautiful journey that he's just led us on through the events of Holy Week. And he just led us on that verbally through. We're about to enter into all of those this week. But even now and today, we believe Jesus is still leading. And he's inviting you into so much. And we couldn't be more excited about the invitation of God to each one of you today. You know, the risen King Jesus is still at work saving people, bringing new life to people, moving powerfully in people's hearts, redeeming people's past, giving them forgiveness, giving them redemption, filling them with the power of his Holy Spirit so that they can do wondrous things that they never knew were possible. And some of you are here in this room and you've been coming for some time. Some of you are here for the very first time. Some of you have been coming for a long time. But you're here and you're not just here. You're here because God is doing something in you. Like you feel that stirring. I know because I meet with so many of you, there's something stirring in so many of your hearts. It's a stirring to follow him, to choose him, to make that decision, to unreservedly give your life to Jesus. And for some of you, I think that the first step in that is baptism. Baptism is going public with the story of the gospel. And so what we're doing on Easter Sunday morning is right here in this room, we're going to be celebrating baptisms from people in this community. And we're going to do something that we haven't done as a church on an Easter Sunday or on any Sunday morning before for over 35 years or so. We're going to have an ice bath that doesn't have ice in it. It's going to be slightly heated. And it's going to be over here on the side. It's going to be filled with water. And we have person after person after person. There's so many people who have decided to identify with Jesus and say, I want to take that step in being baptized. And here's the thing, when you get baptized, you're telling the story of Holy Week. And you're telling the story of what's happened in your life. Because when you get baptized, you get up as you are, and you come into the water, and you tell the story of the gospel of Jesus. You tell the story that here you are, you're sitting in the water, and then you go down under the water, and you're saying Jesus was crucified, dead, and buried. And then it's Holy Saturday, and we don't hold you under for too long. We don't wait. But then you come back up, and you're washed and you're symbolically clean, and you're telling the story that Jesus rose from the dead. But in that same moment, you're not just telling the story of the gospel, you're telling the story of what happened in your life with the Lord. You're saying, this is what Jesus has done for me. He's my king. And that the old has gone and the new has come. That I've been buried with Christ in baptism and I've been raised to walk in the newness of life. And that's happening. And for some of you, if that makes you even stirred in your heart some, and you haven't been baptized since you've been a believing adult, maybe you were baptized as an infant when you were like 1 or 2. That's amazing. You didn't make that decision. If you haven't been baptized since being an adult who can make that decision for yourself, this could be your time. And it's not too late. And we want to encourage you, come visit us at the Connect Center after the service. We do need to know ahead of time. But this is an incredible time to say, Jesus, I want to follow you as my king, the king that I need, not just the king that I think that I want. All right, you guys, Pastor Josh is going to come lead us in a time of response. It's going to be a powerful time, very beautiful. And the worship team is going to come back up on stage. I'll end just by saying this, you guys. There are still today 2 parades. Some of you are like right in the middle. You're in this city and this time and this place in LA. But there's this parade of power, and then there's this parade led by Jesus, a peaceful parade of the King of humility. And the question for each one of you is, which parade are you in? Which king are you following? All right, let's pray together, please. Jesus, we thank you for this time and space, and we thank you for all that you invite us into this week. God, would you move in hearts this morning as you are? Would you stir us? Would you help us to respond? God, we thank you that you are our King who is like no other, that you are a humble King who you just are beyond anything we could have ever imagined or expected. We want to enter into all you have for us this week, but even today, fully and completely. So God, we just pray that now you'd have your way with us in Jesus' name.